This is over, Linda. I've found someone new. The sound of his voice broke something inside me. Soft words, spoken in front of everyone. Our family, our friends, our daughter's wedding guests. For a second, I thought I heard him wrong, but then the silence confirmed it. The laughter faded, the music died, the whole room froze. I looked up, and there he was. David Parker, my husband of 32 years, standing at the head of the table, holding his glass like this was some kind of toast, his face calm, his eyes cold, and beside him sat her. Chloe, his assistant, red dress, red lips, and a smile that said everything I didn't want to believe. Across from me, our daughter, Emily, still in her wedding gown, her hands shaking, her fork slipping from her fingers and hitting the plate with a soft, painful sound. Every face in that room turned toward me, waiting to see the broken wife, waiting to see me scream. But I didn't. I smiled, small, steady, almost gentle, and I said quietly, "Well, thank you for the warning." I reached into my purse, pulled out a white envelope, and placed it right beside his plate. He frowned, his voice low and sharp. "What is this, Linda?" "Just something for you to open later," I said. My tone was soft, calm, deadly calm. Then I turned to Emily. She was crying now, trying to hide it behind her napkin. "Honey," I whispered, "don't let anyone ruin your day, not even your father." I kissed her cheek, stood up slowly, and looked around at everyone, pretending not to stare. "Please," I said with a tired smile, "enjoy your dinner. Have a wonderful evening." Then I walked away, every step echoing through the room like a drumbeat. The big wooden doors closing behind me, sealing that chapter of my life forever. Outside, the hallway felt cold, empty, too quiet. But for the first time in months, I could breathe again. And just when I thought it was over, I heard his voice behind me. "Linda, what did you do?" He was angry now, louder, chasing after me. But I didn't stop, didn't turn, didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing my tears. Because the truth was, that envelope wasn't just paper. It was a plan. A plan I'd been building for 6 long months. While he was busy lying, I was busy learning. While he was hiding secrets, I was gathering evidence. He thought I was blind, but I saw everything. He thought I was weak, but I was already preparing for this day. I was the one who handled the money, the bills, the house, the savings. He never cared to check the details, and that was his first mistake. 6 months ago, I noticed small things, random charges, missing money, perfume that wasn't mine. I followed the trail quietly, patiently, and every step led me closer to the truth. Her name, Chloe, written on receipts for hotel rooms, expensive dinners, weekend trips. He thought he was clever, but I work at a bank, and I know how to find what's hidden. Then one morning, he left his phone unlocked, and I saw everything. The messages, the plans, when he'd leave me, where they'd live, even which furniture they'd take. He said he'd do it after Emily's wedding, so it wouldn't ruin her big day. How generous of him. But what David didn't know was that I had already moved the money, shifted the shares, secured the house, all in my name. While he thought he was winning, he was already losing everything. That night, when he stood up and said those words, he thought he'd ended our story. But in truth, it was me who had just begun mine. The car ride home was quiet. Too quiet. The city lights blurred through the window, like tears I refused to let fall. David drove fast, his jaw tight.
his hands gripping the steering wheel like he could control what had already slipped away. Neither of us spoke, not a single word, just the sound of the tires against the road and the storm building between us. When we reached the driveway, he turned off the engine, but didn't move. He sat there for a moment, staring at me like he was trying to read my face. "What was in that envelope, Linda?" he asked finally, his voice low, sharp. I turned to him, calm, almost smiling. "You'll find out soon enough." He scoffed, angry. "You're making a scene out of nothing, embarrassing me in front of everyone." I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't see my husband. I saw a stranger sitting in his place. "Embarrassing you?" I whispered. "David, you stood up in front of our daughter's wedding guests and told me you were leaving me. I think the embarrassment part is mutual." He slammed his hand against the steering wheel. "Don't twist this, Linda. You made this happen. You've been distant, cold." I laughed softly. "Cold? Distant? You mean smart enough to notice your perfume wasn't mine?" His face froze. The color drained from his cheeks. He didn't expect that. I opened the car door and stepped out slowly, the night air biting against my skin. He followed me into the house, still fuming, still pretending to be in control. Inside, everything was quiet. The house that once held love now felt like a crime scene. I walked to the living room, placed my purse on the table, and turned to face him. He stood near the doorway, his eyes filled with confusion and anger. "What have you done, Linda?" I smiled faintly. "Oh, just what any wife would do after realizing her husband's been spending our savings on his secretary." His face froze. The color drained from his cheeks. He didn't expect that. "You went through my accounts," he said, his voice shaking now. "I manage our accounts," I said softly. "You just never cared enough to look." He ran his hands through his hair, pacing the floor like a man losing his balance. "You can't just move the money, Linda. It's ours." "No, David," I said quietly. "It was ours until you started funding another woman's life with it." His anger turned to panic. "What did you do?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "I protected what's mine." The silence between us grew heavy. He knew what that meant. He understood that everything he built, everything he thought he owned, was already gone. "You can't do this to me," he whispered, almost pleading now. "You already did this to yourself," I replied. He sat down, his hand shaking, his voice breaking for the first time in years. "Linda, please, we can fix this. I made a mistake." I stared at him for a long time. And maybe for a second, I saw a glimpse of the man I once loved. The man who used to bring me flowers, who used to dance with me in this very room when we had nothing but hope. But then I remembered the texts, the lies, the way he humiliated me in front of our daughter. And that softness disappeared. I took a deep breath. "There's nothing left to fix, David." He looked up at me, his eyes full of fear now. "What was in the envelope?" I smiled slightly. "Divorce papers." His face went pale. "You already filed." "6 months ago," I said quietly. "I just waited for the right moment to give them to you." He stood up fast. "You planned this." I nodded slowly. Every detail. The sound of the clock filled the silence, each tick louder than the last. Then I said softly, "You thought you could walk out on me, take our money, our life, and start over with her. But you forgot one thing, David." He swallowed hard. "What?" "I was always the one who held the power. You just held the glass." He stared at me, speechless, defeated. For once, he had no words. I turned and walked towards the stairs. His voice cracked behind me. "Linda, please, don't do this." I stopped halfway, looked back one last time. It's already done. And with that, I walked upstairs, leaving him standing there, surrounded by the life he destroyed with his own hands. That night, I didn't cry, not one tear, because I realized something powerful. The moment you stop begging for someone to stay is the moment you start returning to yourself. And that night, I did exactly that.
Morning came slow. Gray light through half-closed blinds. Coffee untouched on the counter. David hadn't slept. I heard him pacing downstairs all night, every step heavier than the one before. I stood by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. It was strange how calm I felt, like the storm had already passed inside me. Then I heard his car start, engine roaring, tires screeching down the street. He was going somewhere, desperate to fix what couldn't be fixed. I took a deep breath, opened my laptop, and sent the email I had been saving for this exact morning. A few clicks, a short message, and years of silence broke open. Within an hour, the calls began. His business partner first, then the accountant, then his lawyer. Every voice sounded the same, tense, confused, angry, because they had all just received copies of the files I'd collected. Every transfer, every hidden account, every expense under Chloe's name. The truth was out. And this time, he couldn't hide behind charm or money. By noon, I walked into the bank where I worked, calm, steady. My coworkers looked up, whispering. They'd all seen the news alert already. Local businessman under investigation for financial misconduct. David Parker, my husband, the man who thought he was untouchable. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just signed the final set of documents transferring the company's half shares, fully under my name. He'd signed them himself months ago, trusting me with the paperwork he never read. That was his second mistake. By afternoon, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, it wasn't David. It was her. "Linda, this is Chloe. Can we talk?" For a second, I almost laughed. The woman who broke my home now sounded like a child who'd lost her way. "What could you possibly have to say to me?" I asked quietly. "I didn't know he was married. Not at first. I thought you'd left. He said you were gone." I didn't respond, because lies sound different when they come from the mouth of someone who believed them. Then she said something that stopped me cold. "He told me this morning he lost everything, that you took it all. He's scared, Linda. He's not the same." I closed my eyes. The rain outside had stopped. The world felt still again. "I didn't take anything that wasn't already mine," I said softly. Then I hung up. That evening, there was a knock at the door. Slow, hesitant. I already knew who it was. When I opened it, David stood there, drenched in rain, eyes red, face pale. He looked smaller somehow, like life had drained out of him. "Linda," he whispered, "please, I have nothing left." I stepped aside just enough for him to see inside. The photos on the wall, our daughter's smile, the home he once called his own. "You had everything," I said quietly. "You just didn't know how to keep it." He dropped his head. His voice cracked. "I don't know who I am anymore." I looked at him for a long moment, then said softly, "Maybe now you'll finally meet yourself." He didn't speak again. He turned and walked away into the dark. I closed the door, leaned against it, and for the first time, it felt like peace, not pain. Outside, thunder rolled far away. Inside, the clock ticked slow and steady, a sound that no longer scared me. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for someone to love me back. I was learning how to love myself again. And that was the real beginning. Days passed slowly. Quiet mornings replaced loud arguments. The air in the house felt lighter. For once, silence didn't hurt. It healed. I started baking again, something I hadn't done in years. Flour on my hands, sugar on the counter, the smell of vanilla filling the kitchen.
It reminded me of who I was before the lies, before the betrayal. I turned that small comfort into something bigger, a dream that had waited too long. Within weeks, I rented a tiny shop downtown, paint peeling from the walls, but full of hope. The sign above the door read, Sweet Grace Bakery. It wasn't just a business. It was my fresh start. Emily came home one afternoon, her eyes full of guilt and worry. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I smiled softly. "You didn't need to, sweetheart. You were living your own life." She helped me paint the walls, hang the curtains, arrange flowers near the window. Every brushstroke felt like erasing the past, one memory at a time. By opening day, sunlight poured through the glass front. The smell of warm bread drew people inside. Neighbors, friends, even strangers who just wanted to smile again. One customer asked, "Are you Mrs. Parker?" I paused for a second, then shook my head slowly. "No," I said gently, "just Linda now." It felt good to say it. Freeing. Final. As the bakery grew, word spread fast. Orders came in, birthday cakes, wedding cakes, even retirement parties. People laughed here, something this house hadn't heard in years. Every night I closed the shop, wiped the counters, and looked at the glowing sign outside. I whispered to myself, "You did it, Linda. You finally did it." One evening, Emily came rushing in, holding her phone. "Mom, you have to see this." It was an online article. Former businessman David Parker under investigation for fraud and tax evasion. I read the headline once, then set the phone down quietly. I felt no anger, no revenge, just peace. Because life has a way of returning balance. You don't always have to fight back. Sometimes you just have to let truth do the fighting for you. The next morning, a familiar car parked outside the bakery. I saw him through the window. David. He didn't come in, just stood there for a long moment, watching me. Then he turned and drove away. That was the last time I ever saw him. The sun broke through the clouds that afternoon, golden light spilling through the window, dancing across the cakes. It felt like the universe saying, "It's over. You made it." I wiped my hands, smiled, and whispered to myself, this ending was my new beginning.
Years have passed now. The pain has softened. The house is different, quieter, but alive in its own way. Sometimes when I open the bakery in the morning, I catch a glimpse of my reflection in the glass door, and I see a woman I almost forgot existed. Strong, calm, unshaken. The woman who once cried herself to sleep now laughs without needing a reason. The woman who begged to be loved now chooses who deserves her time. Life didn't fix itself overnight, but it bloomed slowly, like spring after a long winter. Every customer's smile, every cake I baked, it all stitched the pieces of my heart back together. Emily has her own family now. She visits every Sunday with her little boy. He runs through the shop shouting, "Grandma, can I have another cupcake?" And I laugh, a sound I thought I'd lost forever. Sometimes people ask me, "Do you ever miss him?" And I pause, thinking carefully before I answer. I don't miss him, I say softly. I miss who I thought he was. Because truth is, heartbreak doesn't destroy you. It reveals you. It strips away everything false until only your real self remains. One evening, as the sun set behind the shop, I stood by the door locking up for the night. The street was quiet, only the golden light of dusk painting the sky. And for a moment, I whispered to the wind, "Thank you for breaking me just enough so I could rebuild myself stronger." I looked up. The same sky that once held my tears now held my peace. And in that silence, I realized something simple. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in. It's about setting yourself free enough to walk away. So, I walked home, slow, steady steps under the fading orange light, the sign behind me glowing softly, Sweet Grace Bakery. Grace.
That's what life gave me in the end. Not revenge, not justice, just peace. And maybe that's all I ever needed.